You have all heard that crack by Winston Churchill that governments usually do the right thing after trying everything else. I have much less faith in that than I did when I first heard it, having worked for many years on the issue of Middle East peace and especially Israeli-Palestinian peace. But in any case, we're delighted to join with our other co-sponsors, the Institute of Palestine Studies, the Georgetown School of Contemporary Arab Studies, and the Middle East Policy Council, and Joyce, who edits the excellent Middle East Quarterly, is here with us today. Thanks to all of you for supporting this. Thanks to all for coming. And to hear a commentary by Rashid about his new book, which is a superb and disheartening analysis, heavily documented, called Brokers of Deceit. It's a stunning analysis of American policy toward this terrible conflict over the last 35 years, and how the United States has been a party, not just an observer or a would-be helping hand, to the failure to do what must be done if the Palestinians and the Israelis and the Americans are to protect their fundamental interests. Most of you know Professor Rashid Khalidi, the preeminent American historian of the Middle East, and especially of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. He has written various groundbreaking books. Maybe the most important in my view is a book called Palestinian Identity. Others are The Iron Cage, which describes the Palestinian dilemma very vividly. The book called Sowing Crisis, and another one called Resurrecting Empire. I recommend all these books to you. They're very readable. They are scrupulously documented, and you will learn a lot from all of these books. His work, the work of the Institute of Palestine Studies, has done a lot, I think, over the years to at least begin to reshape the American approach or the American vision of the Arab-Israeli and Israeli-Palestinian conflict. From a almost universally accepted but deeply uninformed and distorted version to a new willingness and desire to question, to search, to look for a better American approach so that our country can use its vast power and resources and its extraordinary relationship with the State of Israel more effectively. Dr. Khalidi has served as an advisor to the Palestinian Authority's delegation. It was not then the Palestinian Authority, but it was the PLO delegation, although not described as such, during the short-lived Madrid peace process, which led to the Madrid process. He has a BA from Yale, a PhD from Oxford. He has taught at American University Beirut, Lebanon University, Georgetown, Columbia. Then he went to Chicago for 8 years as the director of the Center for Middle East Studies. And then he returned to Columbia, where he is now the Edward Said, holder of the Edward Said Chair for Modern Arab Studies. And he will speak for half an hour, 45 minutes, and then there'll be plenty of time for questions. So again, thank you, Rashid, for joining us. Welcome, and thank all of you for coming.
Well, thank you all for coming. Thank you both for those generous introductions. It's always a pleasure to be in our nation's capital in springtime, especially because April 15th is coming up. It's good to see where all that money is going just before you send in your income tax return, which I haven't yet finished. So, I'm going to talk about the book, and I'm going to only touch on a few highlights. I hope that you all have some questions at the end. In preparation for the Madrid Peace Conference in October 1991, the United States sent letters of assurances to all of the parties that attended this conference. The letter to the Palestinians, it wasn't directed to the PLO, as Ambassador Wilcox said, it was to the Palestinians, promised that the U.S. would oppose actions that were prejudicial or precedential to negotiations, actions like Israeli settlement expansion. This, as with several other promises in this letter of assurances, was never kept. The letter also promised, and I quote, that the United States will act as an honest broker. Similarly, during Israeli-Palestinian negotiations in 2008, 17 years later, U.S. Secretary of State Dr. Condoleezza Rice told the Palestinian delegation that she wanted to meet with them privately, and I'm now quoting from the Palestine documents that were leaked by the Palestinian delegation, put up on the Al Jazeera and Guardian website. She said, I want to meet with you privately, quote, so that I can tell you what I think of your positions without hurting my role as the honest broker. The letter of assurances sent by Secretary Baker to the Palestinians in 1991 and Secretary Rice's comments in 2008 reiterate a central myth about the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. This is that the United States serves as an honest broker between the two sides. In this book, Brokers of Deceit, I argue that over many decades, the United States has in fact acted in a thoroughly one-sided fashion regarding the Palestine issue. In consequence, it hasn't just operated neutrally. It hasn't just presided over a process. It has exacerbated and prolonged a conflict which, according to yet another of these many myths, is one between near equals. You have the Palestinians, you have the Israelis. They just have to be brought to the table. And according to yet another myth, if one party in this conflict is a victim, it's the Israelis who suffer the most. You can see this in most speeches by most American politicians. The suffering of Israelis is lovingly detailed. They are the victims. In fact, the shoe is almost entirely on the other foot. This is a conflict not between two equals, but between a powerful, dominant Israeli state, 64 years old this year, supported. I know how old Israel is because I was born in the same year. It's easy for me to remember that. And this Israeli state is supported and has been supported consistently by the United States. And it is in conflict not with an equal, not with another state, but with a divided, oppressed Palestinian people who either live under occupation and have for 46 years in June, or live dispersed in exile from their homeland and have since 48 or 67, as the case may be. I begin the book with an epigraph from George Orwell. And I'm arguing in the book, and I'm going to argue today, that language has had great importance in the construction of these and other myths. George Orwell wrote in a brilliant essay in 1946, I'm quoting him now, "The slovenliness of our language makes it easier for us to have foolish thoughts. If thought corrupts language, language can also corrupt thought." The framing of this conflict in terms of these myths, and in particular, using terms like honest broker or peace process, has masked, in my view, a bitter reality, which is one of American complicity in the continued dominance of the Israeli state over the Palestinians. For decades, this process has made the prospect of a just settlement of the conflict between Israel and not just the Palestinians, all the Arabs, far less likely. The distortion of language, I'm arguing, makes a critical a crucial contribution to this process by, as Orwell